Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, we got some breaking news for you today. Sydney Sweeney has reportedly been registered with the Republican Party of Florida since June 2024 per Yahoo. How interesting is that? Obviously, we just had a recent controversy, if you want to call it that. I call it the left just freaking out for absolutely no reason with respects to her jeans commercial with American Eagle. Sydney Sweeney has good jeans, and people just lose their minds over it. And we already talked about that here in another video. But today, I want to raise the moral concern here and the bigger elephant in the room, no pun intended here, of the idea that this should be private information anyways, right? It doesn't matter if she's Republican, if you like it or not, if she's Democrat, you like it or not. First of all, I don't care. The fact of the matter is there's a bigger issue here, which is that this should be private information. There's a reason why people's votes are less public than they once were back in the day, where you used to have to hand your ballots to the officials, and it was a very open, public process. And we sort of had to do away with that, and especially with respects to people, standing behind you in the voting booth, making sure that you vote a certain way, and people fearing the repercussions of doing so, which could potentially endanger themselves, right? Their finances, their loved ones, all by not voting a certain way. And so we had all these laws established for a reason. We now have the secret ballot, and for good reason. But when you sort of register as a Republican or a Democrat or whatever party you register in, people sort of know which way that you're voting, right? Because you can't vote in a primary for a party that you're not registered with, right? If you register as a Republican, you can't vote Democrat. You register as a Democrat, you can't vote Republican, and so on and so forth, right, with any other party, which is a huge problem. Now, yeah, sure, maybe we don't know exactly what you voted for in that party, or for that matter, we don't know what the official vote was on the actual election outside of like the primary, for instance. If you're voting for, say, Kamala Harris, or if you're voting for Trump, right, you could be registered as a Republican and still vote for Kamala Harris. But in the primaries, it's not the case. And I've always thought that was a rather huge flaw in the American political system, among many flaws. I mean, there's no shortage of flaws here in America. I think we all know that. I think we're all familiar with them. But it does raise that interesting question there. And so I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about this, right? Obviously that sucks, right? And part of the reason this is like huge issue is like, look, now that people know that she's a Republican officially, because she's tried to remain private in terms of her political endorsements and opinions, they're all going to force her to sort of try to think a certain way. And the last thing that you want happening is having what I like to call it the Jordan Peterson phenomenon. Back in the day, I used to be a huge fan of Jordan Peterson. I actually even went to go see him live for a lecture. And I was a huge fan when he was just a psychologist. And when he was just a psychologist, in fact, a lot of his opinions were actually very left-leaning. If you actually just go back and like listen to things that he was saying, like, huge support for universal health care and things like that. And then he started getting attacked all the time by the leftists and the liberals and any other person who's on the left. And because they were attacked so much, and I would argue too, attacked without real justification at first. He sort of, I think he found solace and comfort by aligning himself with the right. And so now the dude's a full-blown right-wing, just lunatic, man. I mean, he doesn't have a single left-wing opinion left. He's extremely right-wing now, and he didn't used to be like that, which is interesting. They could make a grown man, a professor, somebody who actually taught at Harvard as a professor, change their mind like that, right? Which is rather interesting because he built his career by sort of standing true to his beliefs, right? And he's always preached with people such as like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, for example, right? Who, after experiencing the Gulag camps in Soviet Russia, came out and said that you need to speak up against these atrocities like that, even if it could potentially harm you. It's like we are all responsible. I still take responsibility myself, he would say, right? Which is just like, wow, like that's so. I mean, you can see it, and maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe he truly does believe that way. I mean, hey, look, more power to him. But what I will tell you is like that public pressure. That's something that not a lot of people can sort of, stand their ground on, right? I mean, if you're being attacked by everybody on one side of the political aisle, yeah, you're gonna find some, comfort in aligning with the other party. And so, who knows? Maybe that happens now. Maybe she feels a lot more comfortable being a Republican. I mean, obviously, she already did a year ago, per Yahoo, but. Who knows? Maybe if she did have some of those, Democratic tendencies, she was really, she really wants to be like a part of the left. Nowadays, she's not going to find any comfort in that, right? Because people are going to scare her away. At least I think that's what happens with most people. Obviously, I can't speak for anybody. I can't speak for Jordan Peterson. I can't speak for Sydney Sweeney, but I can speak on my own experience and things that I've seen and witnessed. And I think people tend to tend to change things up, or at least they're going to look in a way that they never thought of looking before. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about this. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Helps out the algorithm when you do so. And thank you very much. Try to get us to 300 subscribers. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Always do your own research. Make up your own mind.